Have you ever felt drained or manipulated by someone, like their behavior is just too much to handle? Imagine regaining control over your life, your emotions, and your peace. Today, I'm going to show you how you can take back that power without fighting back. You deserve to feel strong and in control, and it starts right now. Narcissists thrive on creating emotional chaos. They provoke reactions, feed off arguments, and manipulate situations to keep the spotlight on themselves. This is where mastering emotional control becomes your greatest weapon. When you refuse to react, you take away their power, leaving them frustrated and disarmed. Imagine a situation where a narcissist is trying to provoke you by belittling your achievements. Instead of responding with anger or defensiveness, pause. Take a deep breath, remain calm, and remind yourself that their words are a reflection of their insecurities, not your worth. By not engaging emotionally, you've already won the interaction. A key practice here is self-awareness. Observe your feelings without judgment. If you feel anger or frustration rising, acknowledge it silently, but don't let it dictate your actions. The Stoics believed that emotions are like waves. They come and go, but you have the choice to let them pass without being swept away. Another practical method is reframing. Let's say a narcissist criticizes your choices in front of others to embarrass you. Instead of reacting impulsively, use the moment to practice detachment. Think of their words as noise, unworthy of your energy. You can even respond with calm indifference, such as, "That's an interesting perspective," which shuts down their attempt to bait you further. Lastly, remember that maintaining emotional control is not about suppressing feelings, but understanding them. It's about responding thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. When you master this, you become unshakable, and the narcissist is left powerless, unable to manipulate or control your emotions. This control not only protects your peace, but also sends a clear message that you are untouchable, a dynamic that narcissists find deeply unsettling. Narcissists crave attention more than anything else. They thrive when all eyes are on them, and they feed off the admiration or reactions of others. One of the most powerful ways to deal with them is to starve them of this attention. It's a subtle yet profoundly effective way to assert control over the dynamic. Imagine you're at a group gathering, and the narcissist begins dominating the conversation, exaggerating their achievements, and fishing for compliments. Instead of engaging, simply redirect your attention to someone else in the group. Ask another person a question, or shift the topic entirely. This sends a subtle signal to the narcissist that their behavior is not commanding the attention they desire. It's a small action, but it speaks volumes. Another example is in personal conversations. If a narcissist is trying to steer every discussion back to themselves, you can respond with neutrality. For instance, if they're boasting about their latest accomplishment, instead of feeding into it with praise, you can say, "That's interesting," and then move on to a different subject. This neutral response leaves them without the validation they crave, forcing them to rethink their strategy. Even online interactions can follow this principle. If a narcissist tries to bait you into an argument on social media or demands attention through exaggerated posts, the best response is no response. Don't engage in debates, don't react to their posts, and don't give them the platform they're seeking. Silence can be louder than words, and it shows them that their tactics won't work on you. The Stoic mindset teaches us to focus our energy only on what's within our control. By consciously choosing not to give attention to narcissists, you're asserting control over your energy and attention. Over time, this lack of validation becomes a form of torture for them, as they rely on external admiration to maintain their fragile sense of self. By refusing to play into their games, you strip them of the power they desperately seek. Narcissists thrive on manipulation and control. They want to dictate the narrative and keep people guessing. One of the most effective ways to disrupt their behavior is to remain calm and unreactive, no matter how hard they push your buttons. Your composure is your greatest weapon because it denies them the emotional reaction they're looking for. Picture this. A narcissist criticizes you in front of a group, hoping to provoke a defensive or emotional response. Instead of reacting, you calmly acknowledge their comment without showing any emotion. For instance, if they say, "You always mess things up," you could respond with something like, "That's your perspective," and leave it at that. This neutral response leaves them frustrated because their goal was to destabilize you emotionally. Another example is in one-on-one situations. Narcissists may use personal insults or bring up sensitive topics to get a rise out of you. Suppose they make a sarcastic comment about your achievements, saying, "Wow, must be nice to have such low standards." Instead of firing back, you could simply smile and say, "I'm content with my choices." This response shows that their attempts to provoke you have no power over your peace of mind. Even in high-stress situations, remaining composed can have a significant impact. If a narcissist tries to escalate an argument by raising their voice or making inflammatory statements, your calm demeanor can act as a mirror, reflecting their irrational behavior. Responding with phrases like, "I hear what you're saying," or "Let's discuss this when things are calmer," can diffuse the situation and put you back in control. Stoicism teaches us the importance of emotional control and not allowing external forces to dictate our inner peace. When dealing with a narcissist, maintaining a calm and composed demeanor not only protects your mental well-being, but also denies them the emotional fuel they crave. Over time, they'll realize that their tactics are ineffective against someone who remains unshaken, and this can be a powerful way to regain control in any interaction. Narcissists often seek to dominate conversations and interactions, controlling the flow of communication to center everything around themselves. One of the most effective ways to challenge their behavior is to redirect conversations away from them. By doing this, you disrupt their need for attention and force them to confront the discomfort of not being the focus. Imagine this scenario. A narcissist is boasting about their latest accomplishment, going into great detail about how superior they are compared to others. Instead of feeding into their need for validation, you could subtly shift the conversation by asking a neutral question that focuses on someone else or the broader context. For example, you might say, "That's interesting. How do you think this compares to what someone else achieved recently?" This redirects the focus and makes them realize they're not the only one in the spotlight. Another example is when a narcissist tries to steer the conversation toward their grievances or how unfairly they've been treated. They might say, "Nobody ever appreciates what I do around here." Instead of affirming their self-pity, you could respond with something like, "I've noticed a lot of people are going through challenges right now. What do you think we can do to support everyone?" This shifts the focus from their individual narrative to a collective perspective, which they often find difficult to handle. In group settings, narcissists may try to dominate discussions by interrupting others or dismissing their opinions. Suppose during a team meeting, they cut someone off mid-sentence to share their own views. You could interject politely but firmly, saying, "Hold on, let's hear what the other person was saying first. We can come back to your point afterward." This not only redirects the attention, but also subtly asserts that their input isn't more valuable than anyone else's. Redirecting conversations is a subtle yet powerful technique that aligns with Stoic principles of focus and balance. It takes the spotlight off the narcissist and introduces a sense of equality and shared dialogue. By doing this consistently, you not only assert your boundaries, but also create an environment where their tactics lose their effectiveness. This approach protects your peace and subtly undermines their attempts at control without engaging in direct conflict. One of the most effective ways to deal with a narcissist is by mastering the art of emotional detachment. Narcissists thrive on your emotional responses, whether it's frustration, anger, sadness, or even excessive admiration. By refusing to give them this satisfaction, you not only protect your own mental peace but also subtly frustrate their attempts to manipulate or control you. Let's break this down. Imagine a narcissist tries to provoke you during a conversation by making subtle jabs or sarcastic remarks. They may say something like, "It's impressive how you've managed to stay in your position despite all the mistakes you've made." This is designed to bait you into a defensive or emotional reaction. Instead of taking the bait, a Stoic approach would involve calmly responding with something neutral like, "Thank you for your perspective." By refusing to react emotionally, you communicate that their attempts to provoke you are ineffective, which is incredibly disempowering for a narcissist. Another scenario could be when a narcissist attempts to guilt-trip you into doing something for them. They might say, "After all I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" The key here is to maintain emotional distance while addressing the situation logically. Instead of feeling compelled to justify yourself or give in, you could respond with a calm and collected statement like, "I appreciate what you've done, but I'm not able to help in this instance." This kind of response is firm, clear, and devoid of emotional vulnerability, qualities that frustrate a narcissist's need for control. Let's consider a deeper example. Suppose a narcissist in your life frequently shares exaggerated stories about their successes to gain admiration. They might embellish every detail, expecting you to validate and praise them. Instead of engaging in their narrative, you can respond in a way that's neutral and grounded. For instance, "That's interesting. What are your next plans?" Or even just nodding without adding any emotional weight to the conversation. Over time, this lack of emotional investment from you will make it less rewarding for them to seek validation from you. Detachment doesn't mean coldness or cruelty. It means reclaiming your emotional autonomy. It's about understanding that the narcissist's behavior is a reflection of their insecurities and that you are not obligated to participate in their games. The Stoic principle of control teaches us to focus on what is within our power, our reactions, emotions, and mental state. By practicing emotional detachment, you create a barrier that shields you from their attempts to provoke or manipulate. When you consistently refuse to give a narcissist the emotional reactions they seek, you subtly dismantle their control. This strategy is not about engaging in a power struggle. It's about rising above it entirely. You maintain your composure, protect your peace, and send a clear message. Their tactics have no power over you. It's a quiet yet profound way to assert your boundaries and regain control of your interactions. Another powerful way to deal with a narcissist is to master the art of setting boundaries. firm, clear, and non-negotiable ones. Boundaries act as a shield that protects your mental health, time, and energy from being drained by the manipulative tactics narcissists often employ. They are not just about saying no, they're about defining what you will and won't tolerate in your interactions. For example, let's say you have a narcissistic coworker who constantly interrupts your workflow with their demands, expecting you to drop everything to help them. Without boundaries, you might feel obligated to comply, leading to frustration and burnout. However, by setting a firm boundary, you can say something like, "I'm currently focused on a task, and I'll be available to discuss this at 3 p.m. This approach is polite yet assertive, making it clear that your time is valuable and you are not at their constant disposal. Over time, they'll realize you're not easily manipulated, which diminishes their control. Another situation could involve a narcissistic family member who frequently criticizes or undermines your decisions. For instance, they might say, "You always make terrible choices. Why can't you do anything right?" Instead of allowing their comments to affect you, a clear boundary would involve addressing their behavior directly. You could respond with, "I'm open to constructive feedback, but I won't engage in conversations that are disrespectful." This sets a standard for how you expect to be treated, making it clear that you won't tolerate verbal abuse or negativity. Consider a deeper example, a narcissistic romantic partner who tries to monopolize your time and isolate you from friends or family. They may guilt-trip you with statements like, "If you really loved me, you wouldn't need to spend time with anyone else." This is a classic manipulation tactic designed to control you. A strong boundary in this case might sound like, "I value my relationships with others, and spending time with them is important to me. I won't give that up." While this might provoke resistance initially, standing firm reinforces that you won't allow their insecurities to dictate your life. What makes boundaries effective is consistency. It's not enough to state them. You must follow through with action. If a narcissist crosses a boundary you've set, you need to reinforce it without hesitation. For instance, if your coworker continues to interrupt despite your boundary, you might escalate by saying, "As I mentioned earlier, I'll be available at 3 p.m. Please respect my time." If a family member continues to criticize, you might need to disengage from the conversation altogether, stating, "I won't continue this discussion if it remains disrespectful." And if a romantic partner persists in their controlling behavior, you may need to reevaluate the relationship entirely. Setting boundaries is not about being confrontational, it's about protecting your sense of self. Narcissists thrive in environments where there are no limits to their behavior, so by establishing and enforcing boundaries, you disrupt their ability to manipulate or dominate you. The Stoic philosophy of self-control and inner strength plays a critical role here. It teaches you to focus on what you can control, your actions, reactions, and personal standards. When you hold firm to your boundaries, you're not only protecting yourself, but also sending a clear message. You value your own well-being and won't allow anyone to compromise it. This can be incredibly frustrating for a narcissist because it challenges their sense of entitlement and power. Over time, they'll either respect your boundaries or distance themselves. Either outcome is a victory for your peace of mind. Another powerful way to deal with a narcissist is by practicing emotional detachment. Narcissists thrive on your emotional reactions, whether it's anger, frustration, sadness, or even joy. They feed off the energy you invest in reacting to their manipulative tactics. Emotional detachment, therefore, is not about being cold or indifferent, but about refusing to give them the emotional fuel they crave. Let's explore this with a real-world example. Imagine a narcissistic coworker who constantly belittles your ideas during meetings, trying to provoke a reaction or assert dominance. Instead of becoming visibly upset or defensive, you maintain a calm and composed demeanor. You respond with a neutral comment like, "Thank you for your input. Let's move forward with the discussion." This disarms them because you haven't given them the satisfaction of seeing you react emotionally. Over time, they'll learn that their attempts to provoke you are futile, which diminishes their influence over you. Another scenario could involve a narcissistic friend who habitually turns conversations into opportunities to brag about their accomplishments while subtly putting you down. For instance, they might say, "Wow, you're still working at that level? I was promoted to senior management last year." Instead of feeling compelled to compete or explain yourself, you can detach emotionally by responding with, "That's great for you," and shifting the conversation elsewhere. By refusing to engage in their games, you show them that their attempts to one-up you don't affect you. A more challenging example is dealing with a narcissistic partner who uses guilt or emotional manipulation to control you. For instance, they might say, "If you really cared about me, you'd cancel your plans and spend time with me instead." Emotional detachment here means recognizing their tactic for what it is, a way to control your behavior. You can respond calmly by saying, "I understand how you feel, but I've already made plans that are important to me." By staying composed and sticking to your decision, you assert your independence and deny them the power to manipulate your emotions. Emotional detachment requires a high degree of self-awareness and self-control, both of which are core principles of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, often reminded himself to focus only on what he could control, his own thoughts and actions. Applying this to interactions with narcissists means letting go of the need to change their behavior or seek validation from them. Instead, you focus on maintaining your inner peace and responding in ways that align with your values. One practical technique for emotional detachment is the pause and assess method. When a narcissist says or does something that triggers you, pause for a moment before responding. Ask yourself, "Is this worth my energy? How can I respond in a way that aligns with my values?" This brief pause helps you avoid impulsive reactions and gives you the space to choose a more thoughtful response. Another helpful approach is practicing mindfulness. By staying grounded in the present moment, you can observe the narcissist's behavior without being drawn into it emotionally. For example, if a narcissist starts to criticize you unfairly, you might silently acknowledge, "This is their pattern of behavior," without internalizing their words. This creates a mental buffer that protects you from their emotional influence. Lastly, focus on building emotional resilience through self-care. Activities like journaling, meditation, or physical exercise can help you process your emotions in a healthy way, reducing the likelihood of being triggered by a narcissist's behavior. When you're emotionally resilient, you're less likely to react to their provocations, which further frustrates their attempts to control you. Practicing emotional detachment is a form of reclaiming your power. It signals to the narcissist that you are in control of your emotions and that they cannot manipulate you as easily as they might with others. Over time, This can lead to a significant shift in the dynamic of your relationship with them, making it clear that you are no longer a source of their emotional supply. This not only protects your mental well-being, but also forces them to reevaluate their behavior toward you. Another way to effectively deal with a narcissist is by setting boundaries and consistently enforcing them. Boundaries are essential because narcissists often feel entitled to your time, energy, and attention. Without clear limits, they will likely push, manipulate, and overstep, leaving you emotionally drained. Setting boundaries is not only a form of self-respect, but also a powerful way to communicate to the narcissist that you are not someone who can be easily controlled. Let's explore some examples of how boundaries can play out in different situations. First, consider a narcissistic family member who has a habit of showing up unannounced and demanding your time, often disrupting your personal plans. To set a boundary, you might say, "I value my time and need notice before visits. Please call ahead if you'd like to come over." This communicates a clear expectation. When they inevitably try to test your boundary by showing up uninvited again, you can reinforce it by refusing to let them in, saying calmly, "As I mentioned before, I need advance notice." Each time you reinforce the boundary, you're teaching them that your limits are firm and non-negotiable. Another example might involve a narcissistic colleague who constantly offloads their work onto you while taking credit for your efforts. Here, you can set a professional boundary by saying, "I can't take on additional tasks right now as I'm focused on my own responsibilities. Please handle this yourself or discuss it with our supervisor." When they try to guilt or pressure you into helping, hold your ground by reiterating, "I understand you need support, but I have my own deadlines to meet. I'm unable to assist this time." By standing firm, you establish that your time and contributions cannot be taken for granted. Now, let's address a more emotionally charged scenario, such as a narcissistic romantic partner who constantly invades your privacy by checking your phone or monitoring your social media. Setting a boundary here involves addressing the behavior directly. For example, you might say, "I value trust in a relationship, and I'm not comfortable with you looking through my personal devices. This needs to stop." When they try to justify their actions or turn the situation around on you, remain calm and assertive. "I understand your concerns, but trust is essential. If you can't respect this boundary, we need to reevaluate how we move forward." This sets a clear limit while making it clear that you are not willing to compromise your values. Boundaries also extend to emotional interactions. Narcissists often use emotional manipulation, such as guilt-tripping or gaslighting, to control you. For instance, if a narcissist constantly invalidates your feelings by saying, "You're overreacting," you can set an emotional boundary by responding, "I'm entitled to my feelings, and I won't engage in conversations where my emotions are dismissed." When they continue to push, you can disengage entirely by ending the conversation or physically removing yourself from the situation. This demonstrates that you will not tolerate emotional manipulation. The process of setting boundaries requires self-awareness and self-confidence. Narcissists are skilled at pushing limits and testing your resolve, so it's crucial to remain consistent. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, our thoughts, actions, and responses, rather than trying to change the behavior of others. Applying this philosophy, you can approach boundary setting as an act of self-discipline and self-preservation. One practical technique is to use clear, concise language when setting a boundary. Avoid lengthy explanations or justifications, as narcissists may exploit them to argue or manipulate. Instead, state your boundary simply and directly, such as, "I won't tolerate being spoken to disrespectfully," or "My time is valuable, and I need advance notice for plans." Another helpful approach is preparing for pushback. Narcissists will often test your boundaries to see if they can break them. Anticipate this behavior and decide in advance how you will respond. For instance, if a narcissist ignores your request not to call you after work hours, you can let the call go to voicemail and respond the next day during appropriate hours. This reinforces the boundary and sends the message that their attempts to override your limits won't succeed. Finally, practice self-care as you set and enforce boundaries. Dealing with a narcissist can be emotionally taxing, and it's essential to nurture your mental well-being. Activities like journaling, meditating, or seeking support from trusted friends or a therapist can help you stay grounded and resilient. Boundaries are a reflection of your self-worth. By setting and maintaining them, you're not only protecting yourself from the narcissist's manipulative tactics, but also reinforcing your independence and inner strength. Over time, this approach can reduce the narcissist's ability to influence you, allowing you to regain control of your life and emotional well-being. One of the most effective strategies to deal with a narcissist is to avoid engaging in power struggles. Narcissists thrive on control, and their primary goal in any interaction is to dominate, manipulate, and assert their superiority. When you enter into a battle for power with a narcissist, you're playing by their rules. They feed off your emotional reactions, and you will find yourself trapped in an endless cycle of conflict that drains your energy and time. Instead of fighting for control, it's crucial to detach emotionally and approach the situation with a calm, stoic mindset. This means resisting the urge to argue or defend yourself, even if the narcissist is deliberately provoking you. It might feel frustrating and at times even infuriating, but engaging emotionally with them only strengthens their hold over you. So, the first step in avoiding power struggles is to practice emotional detachment. To understand the importance of detachment, let's look at an example. Imagine you're having a conversation with a narcissistic colleague who constantly interrupts you and dismisses your opinions. Instead of getting angry or trying to convince them that your viewpoint is valid, a more effective response would be to remain composed. You could acknowledge their input, but you don't need to engage in a back-and-forth argument about whose perspective is right. By staying calm and not reacting, you take away the narcissist's power to control the situation through provocation. In another example, a narcissistic friend might try to manipulate you into making decisions that benefit them, whether it's borrowing money or prioritizing their needs over your own. They might use guilt-tripping tactics or play on your emotions to get their way. If you fall into the trap of feeling guilty or attempting to justify your decision, you've already lost. Instead, the key is to stay firm in your boundaries and calmly state your decision without further elaboration. For instance, if they pressure you to lend them money, you can simply say, "I'm not in a position to do that right now," and leave it at that. There's no need to explain yourself or get into a lengthy discussion about why you're saying no. The moment you enter into a power struggle with them, they'll attempt to manipulate the conversation to fit their narrative. This concept also applies to romantic relationships with narcissists. Often, they will try to bait you into arguments or emotional confrontations to assert their dominance. They might twist your words or exaggerate situations to make you feel guilty or inferior. Here, emotional detachment is essential. A narcissistic partner might accuse you of not caring or not understanding them, but instead of reacting defensively or becoming emotionally entangled, you can simply say, "I hear what you're saying, but I don't think we're going to see eye to eye on this." Then calmly disengage from the conversation. By doing so, you deny them the emotional reaction they crave. Now let's talk about the concept of gray rocking. Gray rocking is a technique where you deliberately become emotionally unresponsive or boring to the narcissist. You don't offer any emotional reactions, opinions, or personal information that they can use against you. The narcissist thrives on drama and conflict, so by being dull and unengaged, you remove the entertainment value they get from interacting with you. For example, if a narcissistic family member tries to provoke you with their usual dramatic stories or complaints, you can respond with simple, neutral phrases like, "That's interesting," or "I see." The lack of emotional engagement makes you less of a target, and over time, the narcissist may lose interest in trying to manipulate you. Another essential aspect of avoiding power struggles is to recognize that narcissists will often attempt to control your perception of reality. They might gaslight you by twisting the truth or denying facts in order to create confusion and doubt. When this happens, it's important not to try and convince them of your version of the truth. Narcissists rarely admit when they're wrong, and arguing with them is futile. Instead, accept that their version of reality is irrelevant to you. You don't need their validation, and you certainly don't need to change their mind. Your truth is yours to keep, and the more you rely on your own sense of reality, the less power the narcissist has over you. A useful approach is to adopt the Stoic principle of focusing on what you can control. In any situation with a narcissist, the only thing within your control is your response. You can't change their behavior, but you can choose how to react to it. By avoiding the power struggle, staying calm, and refusing to be manipulated, you protect your peace of mind and preserve your emotional energy. The more you practice this strategy, the less impact the narcissist will have on your life. Power struggles thrive on emotional engagement, so by withdrawing your emotional investment, you starve the narcissist of what they need to feel powerful. Over time, they will either lose interest in trying to provoke you or will learn that you're not someone they can manipulate or control. The key takeaway is to not let the narcissist define the interaction or dictate your emotional state. By practicing emotional detachment, setting boundaries, and avoiding unnecessary conflict, you shift the dynamic from one of control to one of self-respect and autonomy. It's not about winning or losing the argument. It's about reclaiming your personal power and protecting your peace. This Stoic approach allows you to navigate interactions with narcissists in a way that leaves you empowered rather than drained.